Okay. Close to my heart because I'm a businessman. So I'll be talking about money, 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 money. Okay, so let's start. I'll be sharing to you another aspect of our PCVP community life in order to deepen our relationship with the Lord. This is about the Christian and how should he or she regards money or wealth or possessions, and with emphasis also on tithing. Okay, but before getting serious in this matter, let me show this slide. Comments from a U.S. comedian and an actress. So Jerry Seinfeld, a TV U.S. comedian, said, "Dogs have no money. Isn't that amazing? They're broke their entire lives, but they get through. You know why dogs have no money? Because they have no pockets." And, well, just as a Gabor, kapanahonan ni Brother June. Zaza Gabor. She is a sexy actress before. No, there is nothing wrong with a woman welcoming all men's advances as long as they are in cash. Oh, ladies or sisters, agree ba kayo? Anyway, so this is just to set the tone that it should be an informal, simple gathering and just to listen to God's word this time. And the objectives of my talk, really three things. To know some important biblical teachings about money, and what are the attitudes of a Christian towards money and possessions, and know the relevance about giving back of all these graces and blessings of God, possessions, meaning also like time, talent, and treasure. So the relevance of giving back to God for all these blessings through tithing. Okay. In the Bible, mas marami yung verses and passages about money and possessions rather than about love, about faith, no? Bakit kaya? Yan yung tanong, bakit kaya? And basically, because money, possessions, as a person, as a human being, has that tendency really to be attached to it, So money is a spiritual issue, but money can also be the cause of pain. And money dealings will become problematic when one or more parties have that selfish desires in their hearts. I would assume that all of us here know that money is neither good or bad. The problem starts when there is an excessive love for money or greed of money and possessions. And that love for money, which according to the first letter of Paul to Timothy, which is very famous, in our Christian life, is money is the root of all evils. In fact, I was surprised, I'm coming here this morning. I was kasi naka-tune in ako sa our FM radio 98.7. Siguro hindi nyo. Kasi yun eh.
Wala ko rin.
98.7 is the teachings of Christian teachings and the Voice of America, na station. So, you know what? Yung kanina, the talk was about, it was driving, the talk was all about money. Sabi ko nga, talagang yung destined to talk about money today with you. And that love for money, again, is the root of all evils. And this is tantamount to be a case of idolatry. Loving money is a case of idolatry. Making money as his or her God, as the first priority. Diba? And Christ has a lot of warnings and teachings on this, on handling wealth and possessions. For money can make or unmake a man or a woman's being or one's life. Jesus reminds us through Matthew 6:24 that no man can serve two masters at the same time. No man can serve God and money at the same time. So I don't have to elaborate on this. The hazards, the evils, the distractions of money can do to a person. His works, his friends, his family, his community, even the church, and the country. We just look around, and read in the newspapers and see on the TV, especially these days, about the drug menace. Billions of pesos are into it. People in customs are into it. The excessive love of money isolates us from God. It tends to muddle our priorities, and a consequence, God takes a back seat. It can distract us from our identities as children of God. Money can be a great blessing, again, as I've said, but it can also cause a person to lose his soul. And one committing the sin of avarice or greed is cut off from God's love and generosity. Since the person and his possessions become now the center of it all, everything depends on the person and his treasures, his time, his talent, and not on God, the Creator and the source of all. And as a Christian, we must always live in truth that God creates everything, owns everything, and shares everything, and knows everything. And that God must rule over our money and possessions, and God must become first in our lives. As in Psalm 24, verse 1, the earth and its fullness belong to the Lord. The world and all that dwell in it belong to the Lord. Then how do we counter and fight it out? This temptation of the evil one to love and to be attached to money, wealth, and possessions. Of course, first, we have to be born again with the Spirit. Conversion. To wear the armor of God. To have a steadfast, meaning to have a steadfast relationship with your God, with my God, with our God. So that the Spirit will guide us and grant us the graces to have the desired attitudes and behaviors towards money and possessions and wealth. So, what should be our major attitudes? Only two. So, madali lang. First attitude is that we should realize, accept, and live by it, that we are only stewards of God's blessings, of wealth and possessions. We are not owners. Not owners. We're only stewards. If that is our frame of mind, every day, then it can really fight. It can really make us be courageous to fight these temptations. And second is, we must have a grateful and cheerful heart in giving back. We should be faithful to our role as God's stewards, for He has always, as I've said in my breakfast sharing, God has a lot of surprises, no? Because of His unsurpassed generosity. So as a stewards, you can take note here with all those passages. We should be skillful, resourceful, faithful, be in the Lord's service, be content of what we have, what you have, Do not love money. Be wise in using money. Serve. While we are in the Lord's service, for God rewards us beyond our expectations and dreams. Okay. Continuation ito kanina sa sharing ko. I availed of an early retirement program, no, in San Miguel after working for 17 years. And when God called me to another life, even if it was in the peak of my career, then after that retirement, we put up a business in Los Baños, Laguna, with the agreement with my business partner that I will give more time to my apostolate for the elderly, while we were into insurance selling, at the side. Since I said yes to the business, I had to study insurance and sell diligently. I was a serious salesman, so to speak. That I qualified for the first 2 years in insurance. I qualified for the national winners. But my God was telling me then that, okay, Ray, you have initially done a good job in the gift of insurance business, but this is not really my will for you. So my heart was restless, so I was praying to the Lord, Lord, where are you calling me to be? Successful, to be happy in my work? And lo and behold, while I was having a client call with my fellow colleague in San Miguel, selling insurance to him, he said, just suddenly, Ray, why not put up a laboratory? And that was the start of it. The laboratory, since it is now 21 years, we started with 8 people, and we are now 180 people in the business, 5 laboratories throughout the country. So, that really is God's ways if we answer and obey His call. Looking back, we are at this state of business because we were good stewards, of what God has given us. Our skills which we learned from San Miguel, our time and effort to make the business grow and be honest in it, and God reward us all this with our treasure in the form of positive incomes yearly since we started. And that really shows how God works with unsurpassed generosity if we do our part and not to be attached to worldly possessions. Thus, the second attitude towards wealth and possessions after being good stewards is really not to forget to have a grateful and cheerful heart in giving back to our Creator, the great provider. To be duty-bound to give back to God, to our Creator, for God's goodness and providence exceed all measures. As Christians and as stewards, we have a duty and an obligation to give back generously to our God, because it cannot be outdone in generosity. How? Aside from almsgiving, in the form of giving back to God, aside from almsgiving and donating or giving away one's possession, that's an extreme one, tithing is another. In Tagalog, anong Tagalog sa tithing? Sige na. Ikapo. Ikapo. Diezmo or ikapo. Why ikapo? Because it's ikasampo. Diba? So, it's because the definition of tithing is simply 1/10 part of something. It's from an old English word, theogopa. It is the practice established by God in the Old Testament of returning 10% of one's blessing to God. To mention from Leviticus chapter 27, verse 32, the tithes of the herd and the flock shall be determined by sealing to the Lord as sacred every 10th animal as they are counted by the herdsman. The tithe looks back to the ancient practice of offering to God a small portion of the harvest or the sacrifice of a young animal to express gratitude to the Creator. Early Christians have been reminded always that being a generous giving person is a hallmark of the Judeo-Christian tradition. The Church Council of Macon ordered payment of tithes, and in the 8th century, Emperor Charlemagne in Rome made tithing to the church to be a part of the church and civil law. But do Catholics really tithe? According to an American writer and businessman, Charles Zick, author of the book Why Catholics Don't Give and What Can Be Done About It, Christians, he said, Christians in general tithe about 2.2% of their income. While that number is not much to be proud of, Catholics average half that amount. Why this is so? According to the author, some of the reasons why Catholics remain uncharitable are because they have difficulty letting go and letting God. Siyempre, attached to their possessions. Second, because they only give if there is a big blessing they receive. Kaya nanalo sa loto, so tight, bigay, share. Third is because they start giving if ever they have a faith experience. So, kasi na-realize nila, ito pala yung kailangan as a good Christian, as a good follower. So, na-experience nila yung pagbabago or blessing, may miracle, so they start giving. Fourth is because they fail to plan. Because tithing is really involves planning, budgeting. Fifth is because they only give if there is a corresponding return or payback. May kapalit, di ba? And lastly, because we are not being taught of this practice of giving back or wrongly informed of its concept or notion. While I had this talk a few years ago with all the participants in South Metro Manila, I conducted a survey, personal nila opinion or reason, ano ba talaga, bakit hirap yung mga Katoliko or tayo, mga Kristiyano, to give back, to have tithing. So, alam niyo pa yung nalalo? 50% of the attendees or participants in that survey said, number 6. Because they're not being taught or they're wrongly informed of the concept and the notion of tithing. Agree ba kayo doon?
Agree, yes.
Agree? Pero may nagsabi noon na meron pang isang reason noon na because sa community, no? Ang isang reason din sinabi, wala, hindi ko na-include dito kasi isa lang yun eh. Ayaw niya mag-tithe kasi nakikita niya na that the money was wrongly used or not being, diba? So, nandun yung isang reason for that in the community. Okay. So, why we give tithes? Or why does God call us to tithe? Okay, simply, first, this is given in recognition and gratitude for the blessings that God has given each one of us. We have to recognize and be grateful for all those blessings. So we have to give back. It is following God's will and providing support to the church or to the community to carry out the works of Christ. Works of Christ in the community, in the parish, in the country. So, like for example, in our community, So where our tithes go? Formation sessions. So first Friday masses, teaching nights, action group meet, annual retreats, married and single retreats, stewards, leaders training, family and children gathering, Lord's Day, music ministry, intercessory, liturgical. That's under formation. After mission, we have Wednesday breakfast. We have this Saturday breakfast. This is a mission breakfast. Involves funds, also involves money, involves expenses. The CLP that you are attending, you have expenses for that. The coffee talks, this is for the young professionals, CYP, market evangelization program, then the National Grand Breakfast. And then right now, Makati chapter is involved in the Guam mission. Then we give also our share to the mission fund for Guam mission. Then in programs and services, we have social action works, the advocacy works, family sports gathering, bereavement and hospitalization assistance, the administrative works, again, the national convention. Next year it will be at Bacolod, no? Not 39. So these are the programs, the services, the mission works that we have to support financially. So that's why we have, in the community there is the tithe team. Okay? This is not only for the community, this is also our obligation or part responsibility in our parishes. So we give to the parish every Sunday Mass to support their programs. No? So again, another reason why we should tithe is it forces the person to take control his finances or to promote financial discipline. Kasi kung if really we're serious in our relationship with God, we have to set aside something. No? This is giving back, financial, in terms part of our monthly income. So, ibig sabihin, kahit 5% or whatever percent, nakaset aside yung part yun sa budget. Kasi that would be deducted from our monthly pay, no? Our monthly income. So we have to have that financial discipline. No? It promotes financial discipline to the members. Fourth is God promises a great reward for those who give generously. Heaven's floodgates will be opened and you will receive blessings in abundance. To cite Malachi chapter 3 verse 10, shall I not open for you the floodgates of heaven to pour down blessings upon you without measure? So that's really a promise by God. If you give back to Him, praise Him, thank Him in whatever form, it's a promise. And my life is a witness to that promise. Fifth is it makes us realize the difference of what we need and what we want. So you know that, right? There's a difference between need and want. When we take a hard look at our expenses and plan to make God first and part of our budget, it is really trusting God that He will continue to provide for our needs as we struggle to provide for the needs of others. So take note. It's underlined. God will continue to provide for our needs as we struggle to provide for the needs of others. In order that what Saint Ambrose said, will not haunt us in this life, as Saint Ambrose said, it is the hungry man's bread that you withhold. The naked man's cloak you store away. The money you bury in the earth is the price of the poor man's ransom and freedom. So the question now is, how much should I tithe? The traditional amount that a believer should tithe is 10%. Because yun nga, ikapo, 10, tithe 10%, 10 part. Asking whether that means gross or net, ito na naman, pag nagtatanong, ano ba yan, gross or net of our income? It's not really relevant. We don't hear much these days about what used to be taught as the precepts of the church. Although 10% would be an ideal, it is not a law, except for the other religion. Like for example, the Iglesia ni Cristo. They're very strict on that. They are really monitor and remember to give their tithes. Diba? It's strict observance. Well, it's not a law, it's not an strict observance. A legalistic approach to a certain percentage really isn't as important as developing an overall grateful and generous way of life. Recognizing that God provides, that God owns everything, and that we are all stewards. Our current practice in the community is the regularity, the consistency is important. It is not how much is important. If one gives more often, the voluntary gesture becomes a habit. And doing this more often becomes commitment. Many who begin on this type of stewardship journey even eventually find that they feel called to increase their giving even beyond the 10%. Remember, this is the gospel 2 or 3 Sundays ago. The story how Jesus is impressed by the poor widow's contribution to the temple versus those of the wealthy. Her giving is an eloquent sign of her faith and love. She's willing to empty her own purse for the sake of God. Her 2 coins means that she does not have enough for her own needs. But she's not afraid to give her life to God in total trust. She has a powerful relationship with her God. Regardless of, again, to repeat, regardless of how much you determine God is calling you to give, it is essential that you give it with a cheerful heart. For God loves a cheerful giver. Well, going back to the widow's gospel story, Jesus' words and the widow's example are tough ones to follow. For those of us who enjoy life in a culture of plenty, we will probably not have the courage or the faith to give it all away. Father Zeus writes, those of us blessed with so much in this world will always have our generosity criticized by the generosity of the poor. We will always think we have done all we should or all we can until someone with fewer resources finds a way to do more. By Father Rio, the parish priest of Santuario, in one of his homilies, he said, there's a certain philosopher who said that only the poor has the right to tell God who's gonna enter heaven. So think of it. To guide you in how much to tithe, this is a simple suggestion. Well, you can have this a proposed suggestion technique, no, effective for me. If you are, for example, earning annually 500,000, you just drop the 3 zeros, last zeros, so meaning 500, di ba? And that is the amount you gave every week for 50 weeks or 52 weeks in a year, di ba? And that's equivalent to 5%. That's equivalent to 5%. That's something good to start. An example, on that 500 peso per week, you can break it to, for example, you give to the church every Sunday 200, diba? 50 pesos if you encounter a beggar. Sa akin, no, anybody, any beggar, whatever who approach me to ask help, I give. I don't have that idea at mind frame that, oh hey, these are from the ano tawag nun, mga kalukuhan or sindikato. No, I don't entertain that idea. What is 50 pesos? What is 20 pesos for that person? And you're riding a car, an air-conditioned car.
Can you pay for my breakfast today?
But remember, then again, 500 yun, no? 200 sa church, 50 sa burger. Well, you can have 50 also to charitable institutions and 200 peso to the community, to BCBP. Yeah? That's how you break the 500 peso. This is only equivalent to 5% of your income. But remember, also, your time and talent spent and shared through the community or through your workplace are also part of giving back. If you quantify all of this could possibly total more than 10%. Right? Again, be a cheerful giver, but don't expect in return or a payback of what you have given. And God will truly bless and surprise you. Could be not directly to you, again, could be not directly to you, but to your spouses, to your parents, to your children, and to your children's children. And all of these blessings in my life I received, I can honestly say, is because of God's promise. When He said in Luke chapter 6, verse 38, "Give and gifts will be given to you. A good measure, packed together, shaken down, and overflowing will be poured into your lap. For the measure with which you measure will return to be measured out to you." You can see here the Bible verses on the joy of giving. So again, as I told you before, there are more verses, passages, commandments, precepts, law in terms of giving, in terms of possession, attitude in possession. The famous one, Act 20:35. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Diba? Proverbs, last one, 28:27. He who gives to the poor suffers no want, but he who ignores them gets many a curse. So I am not joking. I am not getting any commandments or instructions from myself, from my knowledge, from my talent. I'm just giving what God has been saying through the years, through the Bible, through the scriptures. Wala akong ginawa-gawa dyan. Okay, so we'll go. And well, I just want to share so that you can easily remember about trust, about tithing. Just an acronym. So T is for trusting. I, in, T, the, H is heavenly, immense, and numerous gifts from God. So that's tithing. Can you we recited together.
Trusting in the heavenly elements and numerous gifts from God.
Okay. Tithing is one of the important facets now in our newly found or renewed relationship with our Lord. And it is not really how much the amount, but how regular is important. Regardless of how much you determine God is calling you to give, it is essential that you give it with a cheerful heart. For God loves a cheerful giver. Again, as I mentioned and shown to you, the first book in the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians. If you give with a happy heart, according to Frank Hanna, author of the book, What Your Money Means and How to Use It Well, you can Google that. It will form you in virtue. You will learn to develop faith in God's providence. Okay. You will learn also humility, because in giving, you accept that someone else is going to be making choices about how your money is spent. Diba? So, each one gives our, we call tithe. In my previous community, we do not call it tithing. We call it FP. Ano yung FP? Financial Participation. Di ba? Mas siya. It's financial participation. So you will, if you give that tithing or FP, as I said, there's someone else, in the community, in a committee, or whatever. There's someone else going to be making choices about how your money is spent. Diba? Third is you will grow in generosity by learning to let go now. And then fourth is you will set a good example for others who will look up to you for inspiration. In terms of making tithing a habitual and sincere, well, you have really, as part of having that relationship with our God, with your God, personal, you have to pledge to your God. I have this to give every month. As a thanksgiving for all the blessings that I receive, that you receive. So it becomes a commitment. Comes a habit, then a commitment. And it could even surpass what you're giving, if it can even surpass the 10%, the usual 10%. Okay. So to end my talk, I would like, to share again this one to help each one of us remember about tithing. And as we become good stewards of all what God has given or gifted us, then having that right attitudes towards wealth, possessions, money, and of living God's call to give back to Him through others, through the church, through the community, through tithing, we will reap the rewards our Lord has promised us, as I've mentioned. The rewards, what are these rewards of a good steward? First is freedom from anxiety. In front of all the evils in this world, you can experience, you can live on that freedom from not being anxious in all these things confronting, distracting you. And of course, material rewards, as well as the most important reward, which is the eternal reward. Material rewards, according to Mark chapter 10, verses 29 to 31, I will give you my word. There is no one who has given up home, brothers or sisters, others or mothers or father, children or property, for me and for the gospel, who will not receive in this present age 100 times as many And when our God will welcome us and say, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master." God bless us all and good morning.